Members, good afternoon. It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Item 1 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. 2 sets of papers been issued. Details have been set out in the agenda. Items for discussion at the next meeting. There will be 2 items to be discussed at 4:30 on the 15th of July, Monday. First, proposal to amend Air Pollution Control Ordinance to combat the conduct of unlicensed specified processes more effectively through introducing closer notice mechanism and amend the coverage of cement works. And second, proposed amendments to Waste Disposal Ordinance. Do members agree to the arrangement? All agreed. Agenda item number 3, strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. Let's invite the government officials to enter the room. With us today from the administration are Mr. Che Jin-wan, Secretary for Environment and Ecology, Mr. Wong Chun-fai, Commissioner for Climate Change of the EEB, Mr. Chen Pak-chun, Deputy Director, Regulatory Services, EMSD, Dr. Kenneth Leung Kai-ming, Principal Assistant Secretary for Environment and Ecology, Mrs. Dorothy Ma, Principal Assistant Secretary for Environment and Ecology. I believe that there will be quite a number of members that will be putting questions on these 2 items, but we have to hand the room over to the next panel at 4:30. So please make good use of your time and please complete the question and answer within 4 minutes. Over to you, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Members, good afternoon. Faced with climate change, the world is trying to phase out the fossil fuel and expedite energy transformation. Hydrogen is a low-carbon energy with development potential. The country has positioned hydrogen as a key component to the future energy framework. On the 17th of June, the government promulgated the strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong so that we can develop new quality productive forces to work towards carbon neutrality and maintain our international competitiveness. We have taken into account the fact that Hong Kong is an international city and we rely on import in terms of our products. We cannot be completely independent in terms of our hydrogen development. We have to rely on our country because their development and technology as well as supply chain for hydrogen is rather mature, and in some areas our country is leading the world market. So in terms of strategy, I think that we can make full use of our advantage of having support of our country and global phasing so that we can become a trial base for our country. Compared to other low carbon or zero carbon energy, green hydrogen is still not very competitive in terms of pricing and there is still uncertainty. So when we formulate strategy, we have to take into account we have to be flexible in terms of our development of green hydrogen. Now I will ask the Commissioner for Climate Change to walk members through the strategy. Thank you. In the policy address last year, the Chief Executive announced the formulation of strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. Over the past few months, we met with different stakeholders and industry practitioners, including LegCo members that are present in the room right now, so that we learn more about the application of hydrogen in Hong Kong and know more about the challenges and opportunities that the energy has to offer. In these meetings, we have collected some views from the stakeholders. First, they think that hydrogen is a potential new energy for us to achieve carbon neutrality and that for development of a low-carbon energy economy. Now, in terms of challenges and uncertainties of hydrogen development, the government and sector can play their respective roles, and their roles can be complementary. While the sector should work on exploring context for application, they should promote technological demonstration and enhance the cost effectiveness of hydrogen application. While the role of the government should be that, the government should establish standard setting or establish standards and also plan for infrastructure, including hydrogen filling station, and they should also work on capacity building. With the pace of development of green innovative technology over the world, we think that Hong Kong should start working on manpower training, standard setting, and legislative amendment as soon as possible, so that this will not become a bottleneck for us. Having made reference to the views of the sector, we have established an international or interdepartmental working group on using hydrogen as fuels that is composed of 10 different policy bureaus and professional departments. The interdepartmental working group was established in 2022 to remove barriers for hydrogen application locally. The working group has agreed or approved 10 pilot projects, including cross-boundary hydrogen delivery, supply of hydrogen, and facilities, transport, and hydrogen application at industrial sites and remote areas. Apart from this, the EMSD has made reference to the relevant legislation and standards in mainland and overseas, and they have established interim standards on that are applicable to our trial projects. We think that now in terms of transport, moving machinery, and low-carbon electricity generation, there is potential and opportunities for local hydrogen application. As for transport, compared to traditional fuel-propelled vehicles, hydrogen vehicles offer the advantage of zero emission, high energy efficiency, long driving ranges, and minimal noise pollution. It would be more appropriate for Hong Kong to focus on exploring the development of more fuel-intensive heavy hydrogen vehicles and hydrogen vehicles for cross-boundary passenger and freight services. Now, in terms of mobile machinery, hydrogen energy being transportable and highly efficient is suitable for application in areas such as mobile machinery to supply electricity to offices and machinery at construction sites in remote areas without access to adequate electricity supply. Actually, the construction sector has started exploring using hydrogen energy to power their mobile machinery and offices. As we consulted the sector, we know that there are certain challenges to hydrogen development, and we have reached certain consensus. The challenges have been set out in Chapter 3 of the paper. All in all, we want to improve our framework, set standards, align with market, and promote hydrogen prudently, so that we can overcome the challenges that we have, so that Hong Kong can seize the opportunities of hydrogen development and conduct green transformation. Details of the strategies are set out in Chapter 4 of the paper. First strategy is to improve legislation. A lot of stakeholders are concerned about the safety of using hydrogen, and the sector wants the government to set up a framework. So the administration proposes to introduce an amendment bill into the LegCo in 2025 to provide a legal basis for regulating hydrogen used or intended to be used as fuel under Gas Safety Ordinance. EMSD in February and March this year has conducted a consultation with the trade. The result of the consultation shows that the sector actually supports the legislative amendment so that the sector can comply with the laws, and this will boost the confidence of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. and this also poses positive impact to the business environment. Second, establishing standards. Hydrogen application it involves supply, storage, transportation, and application. We have to take into account the topography and business environment of Hong Kong so that hydrogen energy industry meets the safety requirements and to provide the industry with necessary safety guidelines. After amending the legislation, we will be gazetting the interim standards as the Code of Practice and User Manual. We will take into account the safety performance of the sector and review our Code of Practice and guidelines from time to time. In terms of the supply chain and the maintenance workshop and the HFC vehicle mechanics, we will regulate them to make sure that public and these practitioners can be safe. Now, in terms of aligning with the market, we will introduce more HFC vehicle models that are suitable for Hong Kong, and we will also encourage cross-boundary pilot projects. To meet the future needs, we will consider setting up hydrogen filling facilities at different locations. We will also consider converting petrol filling stations into hybrid filling stations. Now, in terms of hydrogen supply, as we have limited renewable energy, apart from adopting innovative technology to convert waste to energy, we have to consider importing low-carbon hydrogen from our country and other places. Now, in terms of manpower, or capacity building, we will be working with training institutions to provide suitable professional training to practitioners. We will also make use of, for example, Green Tech Fund and New Energy Transport Fund to subsidize the sector to conduct green technology and innovative research and development projects. As one of the GBA cities, we can learn from the experience and the hydrogen technology of our neighboring cities so that we can leverage on our advantage of having the support of our country so that Hong Kong can become a demonstration zone and facilitate the hydrogen sector to explore new markets along the Belt and Road countries. Also, Hong Kong can become a super connector and super value adder to attract foreign and mainland enterprises, corporations, and manpower to come to Hong Kong to develop our hydrogen economy. The fourth strategy is advancing with prudence. Currently, in terms of scale and speed, there is still uncertainties in terms of the development of hydrogen. We will leverage on supply, storage, transportation, and application that we have to promote demonstration of hydrogen technology innovations so that development of hydrogen can be like what happens with solar energy, that they can be popularized. As the blue and green hydrogen's supply is still quite limited, we want to make full use of gray hydrogen so that we can accumulate enough experience, and when the market is mature, we will transition to blue and green carbon or hydrogen. To promote the four strategies that I just mentioned, we have come up with the action timetable. They are set out in Chapter 5 of our paper. Apart from submitting the legislative proposal to LegCo in 2025 to amend the GSO, we will also establish standards and certification systems, promulgate code of practice and guidelines, and we will start our publicity campaign in the second half of this year to let the public understand the development of hydrogen energy in Hong Kong and showcase our results. Also, we will be exchanging technical experience with mainland, and also we will be conducting different projects and make use of different funds so that there will be public and private partnership and that we can have more pilot projects for hydrogen development. By 2027, we will establish public hydrogen filling stations in Hong Kong, and we will also work with other cities under the Greater Bay Area. We will organize seminars and industry forums to unlock the associated economic opportunities. To fulfill our vision, we will work with our country, and hopefully by 2027, we will formulate the approach of hydrogen standard certification suitable to the development in and circumstances of Hong Kong. So much for my presentation on the strategy.
有請議員。
I now open the floor for questions to pose questions. Mr. Gary Chan, Mr. Michael Tin, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Ms. Judy Chan, Ms. Elizabeth Quat, Mr. Robert Lee, Mr. Tony Che, Mr. Frankie Yik, and Mr. Stephen Ho have pressed the button to speak. 4 minutes, answers and questions inclusive. Thank you, Chairman. I, in general, support the hydrogen strategy development of the government. I think the government is heading towards the right direction. This is because hydrogen energy will bring about economic benefits and is also beneficial to the environment. Unlike the previous policy, the strategy of hydrogen development looks different. It places emphasis on hydrogen's economic benefits. So I think the government is going to the right direction. In Hong Kong, apart from the application of hydrogen, I think we can seize the opportunities of our countries in developing hydrogen energy. We can set up a demonstration base for how to transform hydrogen energy. If we can build an industrial chain for hydrogen energy, it can become a new economic pillar for Hong Kong. Secretary just now mentioned that he intends to develop Hong Kong into a demonstration base. I think we can go a step further. In mainland, there are lots of advanced and innovative ideas in terms of how to produce green hydrogen. In Hong Kong, we can perhaps produce hydrogen through incineration, for instance, and if we can show this technology to countries along the Belt and Road, then it will attract investment, and we can even export our services to the overseas markets. So apart from applying hydrogen in transport, in construction sites, we can consider building an industrial chain in Hong Kong. Secretary, I thank Mr. Gary Chan for his suggestions. Indeed, hydrogen development can bring about an opportunity for us. It is itself a zero carbon energy, and it will help us achieve carbon neutrality. Hong Kong is an international city and a gateway to the mainland. We can perhaps set up a demonstration zone here so that we can promote our technologies to the overseas markets. In different places around the world, especially countries along the Belt and Road, they need to achieve carbon neutrality as well. They need such low carbon technologies. For mainland projects that try to tap into these markets, they need a platform to finance these projects. Perhaps Hong Kong can ride on these opportunities and become a financing platform for them. On hydrogen production, we are trying to identify different technologies to produce hydrogen. Apart from turning waste into energy, well, we're looking at, for instance, using photovoltaic technology to produce hydrogen. For instance, we visited a landfill in Hong Kong to see if we can make use of the equipments there to produce hydrogen. Mr. Michael Teen, thank you. We can't get blue hydrogen or green hydrogen nowadays. We can only get gray hydrogen. It is a byproduct because we make use of fossil fuels to produce hydrogen, and there's a certain level of carbon emissions in the production process. There have been discussions in the world in terms of using hydrogen to generate electricity. If we use gray hydrogen, we cannot prevent the generation of carbon emissions. So blue and green hydrogen are more desirable. If we do not promote the production of gray hydrogen, I don't know how we can jump to the production of blue and green hydrogen in one step. We should not switch from one type of energy to another. We should encourage bus companies to adopt green hydrogen now. Well, one bus company may be opting for e-buses and another opting for hydrogen fuel cell buses. So what I want to ask is that the HFC double-deckers have been under trial for a certain period of time. For e-buses, because of fire services issues, they cannot park in certain places. While hydrogen buses, they are cheaper. Well, we only need to amend certain legislations in order for hydrogen buses to run in tunnels. We are spending millions and billions of dollars to promote I&T in Hong Kong. We always focus on biotech and digital technologies. In terms of new energy, can we have R&D projects on green and blue hydrogen? Do you think we can do it in the upstream, midstream, or downstream sectors? This is a huge market that we're talking about. Secretary. I thank Mr. Michael Teen for the questions. In terms of our positioning, in our opening remarks, I believe we have touched on this. We have limited space in Hong Kong. We need to achieve carbon neutrality, and hydrogen is one of the tools that can help us achieve carbon neutrality. If we are to turn ourselves into a large-scale base for producing hydrogen, well, we will be met with certain constraints. In terms of promoting hydrogen energy, though, we do have our advantages. That means we can do it through the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors. Well, we can do it through R&D and promotion. If I may elaborate, I believe Hong Kong has its role to play. We want to position Hong Kong as a gateway to the mainland. We can develop ourselves into a demonstration base. At the same time, we have the Green Tech Fund that subsidizes universities and post-secondary institutions in R&D projects in terms of manufacturing and storing of hydrogen. And this fund supports all these projects. Mr. Chen Xiuhong. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. I think it is a good report. Given that Hong Kong lacks natural energy resources, and we are facing 6 challenges through 4 strategies, we're going to build ourselves into a city that promotes hydrogen. We're first going for grey hydrogen, and then we're going to build the infrastructure, and we will have the relevant legislations, and we will build a talent pool. When we wait until the market for blue hydrogen and green hydrogen becomes mature, then we'll turn to that. I'd like to commend the Environment and Ecology Bureau in the past 2 to 3 years for removing the relevant barriers to promote different trial projects. My question is that the government will step up communication with mainland authorities on hydrogen projects. On transporting, storing, and manufacturing hydrogen, well, there is certain foundation in the mainland. It's even leading around the world. Different provinces and cities in the mainland is preparing to work on the next 5-year plan in this regard. In the drafting of the 15th 5-year plan, what role does Hong Kong have to play? In terms of building the industrial chain, how can we work with the relevant mainland authorities to achieve a win-win situation? Now, internationally, there is a lack of certification standard for hydrogen energy. Paragraph 12 mentions that there is a technical specification released by ISO. I understand that last July, the mainland authorities released a guideline for hydrogen energy. And the goal is that by next year, there will be a certification framework for storing and transporting hydrogen, and that it will take part in the setting of standards with international organizations. I want to know if the government has a timeline or roadmap in terms of promoting hydrogen development, and will such work or progress be in line with the work done by our country?
Thank you. Apart from working with the mainland, the member is asking if there are some trial projects that we implement. And of course, as for the setting of standards, I'll ask my colleague to supplement. Apart from conducting demonstration schemes in Hong Kong, we need our own products and measures to achieve carbon neutrality. Through working with different mainland enterprises and departments, we'll explore possibilities and approaches that are suitable to us. Now, in terms of interfacing, we have different standards between vehicles on the mainland and Hong Kong, and we have different standards. It's difficult for Hong Kong vehicles to be charged on the mainland, have their hydrogen fuel be filled at mainland filling stations. Now, in terms of standard setting, we have 4 different areas that we have to work on. Now, the EMSD and their national counterparts have signed certain arrangements that cover safety, efficiency of hydrogen. Now, in terms of development of hydrogen, EMSD is working with the mainland authority on the certification and testing of hydrogen, and they are working on a green channel for delivery and transportation of hydrogen. And the CNSD is also working on simplifying the procedures of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles from entering the mainland. Now, apart from setting standards, we talked about certification of green hydrogen standards. We know that there is not a common or international standard set for green hydrogen, but there is such a trend. Now, in terms of ISO, they have set or established some technical guidelines. Hopefully, these guidelines will become standards. We will continue to look at the situation, and by 2027, hopefully, we will have formulated a set of hydrogen standard certification that is suitable to Hong Kong. Next, Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you. With global warming, we look forward to the development of hydrogen. So I'm glad to see this strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. I have some questions regarding technology. I know that we are passive in terms of the development because green and blue hydrogen is not mature enough. We can only make use of gray hydrogen. So can the infrastructure be shared use among all 3 kinds of hydrogen? Also, on acceptability of such energy in the public or by the public, it is mentioned in paragraph 10 of the paper that EMSD has engaged expert consultants to study the risks involved in the use of tunnels by HFC vehicles. The conclusion is that the risk of HFC vehicles using tunnels is similar or comparable to that of LPG vehicles or other fossil fuel vehicles. Can the administration disclose more of the report formulated by the expert? Because there is some misunderstanding among the public that HFC vehicles would explode when they use the tunnels. I think that the administration and the electrical members should step up our explanatory work. It is said that the EPD will be making use of the hydrogen street washing machines. Can the administration tell us more about that? Where are these street washing machines being used? My third question, again a technical one. If these HFC vehicles are to be used in tunnels, can we allow these vehicles to use tunnels as soon as we amend the GSO? Regarding the question on HFC vehicles using tunnel, I'll ask the EMSD to take the question. We have conducted a very meaningful study because there are a lot of countries in the world that allow HFC vehicles to use tunnels, but they haven't done a study that is as detailed as ours on the risk and safety hazards that can be posed. Hong Kong is the first place that conducts such study. Regarding your question on infrastructure, green, blue, and gray hydrogen are all hydrogen. So in terms of storage, supply, filling, and application of hydrogen, the facilities for those purposes are the same. They differ in terms of their manufacturing and production. So we will be using the same kind of infrastructure for gray and blue and green hydrogen. The reason why we don't wait for green and blue energy or hydrogen before we start adopting hydrogen is because if that's the case, we have to wait a long time because we have to first standards for hydrogen. So rather than waiting for blue and green hydrogen, we should start working on gray hydrogen so that we can accumulate experience and we can set standards. As for the public's acceptance of hydrogen, we have to work on it because we all think or have this impression that hydrogen is a dangerous energy. For any combustible energy, they pose certain hazards, but as long as people comply with the safety standards, the energy can be used in a very safe manner. EMSD, please. Regarding the study on the risk involved in the use of tunnels by HFC vehicles, the experts have actually made reference to mainland Europe and Japan as well as South Korea. HFC vehicles are equipped with different faults as leakage sensors and safety equipment alike. And the hydrogen level stored in the tank will be of a safe level. And there is also limitations on the time frame where the hydrogen can be used, and also the tanks will be subject to crash tests and other kinds of testing. So the risk of HFC vehicles using tunnels is comparable to that of LPG vehicles and other fossil fuel vehicles. Now, for tube trailers that carry hydrogen in bulk, same with other vehicles carrying dangerous energy, they cannot be using tunnels. Next is Elizabeth Quat. Thank you. I support new energy development in Hong Kong, and I also support the development of hydrogen. I'm glad that the administration has promulgated the strategy of hydrogen development, and I think that this is a rather comprehensive one. The EPD have considered the development of the entire industry and how we can explore a foreign and overseas market for our country, apart from the application of hydrogen. I think that apart from EPD, other policy bureaus and departments have to work on it too. So I have some questions. In terms of the context of hydrogen application, I think that this is rather important. For the 10 projects, they're applied different places, for example, business or commercial buildings. Does the government have any other plans? Usually after pilot projects, the government do not implement the technology adopted in the pilot projects. For transport, for example, the government is trying these HFC street washing machines out, and they're also piloting this HFC double-deckers. When will we start adopting hydrogen in other government vehicles? I think that we have to replace all the refuse collection vehicles. Although they are now odorless and leachate-free, but it seems that we are still lagging behind. The refuse collection vehicles are sometimes still emit odor. Can we replace our current vehicles with HFC refuse collection vehicles so that they can be completely odorless? Now, Hong Kong has an advantage. There are 49% of our fossil fuel is hydrogen. Can we adopt or make use of hydrogen in INT development? Does the government have any plan on adopting blue and green hydrogen? Now, the interdepartmental working group is only working on hydrogen, but there are also other forms of zero carbon energy. For example, green methanol, green ammonia, SAF. Can the working group also promote the application of these new energy? Of course, when we promote this energy, we need money. We promote green finance, green bonds, carbon trading. Have we incorporated new energy in the green bond programs, and how will the government further promote it? On publicity and education, as mentioned by Ms. Kwok, not a lot of people understand why we need to promote hydrogen, because most people think that is dangerous. What is the government's plan on publicity and education? I have a lot of questions. Perhaps the Secretary can supplement by writing. Secretary, please be brief. You can supplement in writing. For the other forms of green energy, the government has a plan to promote them. We have different policy bureaus and departments. We are one department, and we have division of labors. And now for SAF and green methanol, the TLB is the bureau that works on promotion of such energy, and EEB is one of the active participants in the promotion of such new energy. We are promoting transformation of green energy in Hong Kong, and this is our goal. The member asked if these projects will be incorporated into our green finance initiatives. We can issue bonds for these projects. As for context of application, in the interest of time, should I supplement in writing or should I continue? Please supplement in writing. As we have to hand the room over to the other panel at 4:30 p.m., I will draw the line after Mr. Robert Lee has finished putting his question. Thank you. We're to discuss the strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. I have two questions. First, how can the government make better use of the financial sector to direct capital to invest in hydrogen industry and enterprises in Hong Kong? Has the government considered working with Hong Kong IC and startup funds or angel funds in the market to develop hydrogen energy in Hong Kong? Also, there are other members who are concerned about collaboration with Greater Bay Area. Our country at Foshan has been developing hydrogen. So does the administration have any plan to strengthen the collaboration and coordination with the country? For example, in Foshan, we can establish R&D centers there for development of hydrogen. And do we have a plan to import hydrogen? Will we be building pipelines for hydrogen importation from the mainland? Thank you, Secretary. Thank you. Regarding the collaboration with the Greater Bay Area, I'll ask my colleague to take the question. Regarding financing, one of our strategies is that we will work with the market. First of all, we'll look at what technology and products are available on the market so that we can make use of them. And we'll also look at whether the technology is popular. Second, as hydrogen develops, there could be new opportunities. I think that, well, as I mentioned, we issue bonds and raise funds on the market to finance our projects. As the hydrogen industry expands, financial sector definitely has their role to play. But then we have to look at the speed of marketization of hydrogen. When we have certain progress, we'll report to the members. As for the issue with Greater Bay Area, I'll ask my colleague.
Commissioner, please. On cooperation with the GBA, we pointed out in the paper that we are going to explore regional cooperation on technology, for instance. We see advanced technological development in our country. We hope to import certain models and tech products and introduce them to Hong Kong. As mentioned, because of the geographical environment in Hong Kong, there are certain limitations. We see that there are local enterprises that are interested in manufacturing hydrogen. But if we want to widely adopt hydrogen, we will have to work with the mainland or other places, and GBA is going to be our major partner. On cross-boundary vehicles and the use of hydrogen in transport, we need cross-boundary collaboration as well. We will explore how we can apply hydrogen in cross-boundary logistics and transportation. We'll have to set up relevant network, and all these require communication with the mainland authorities. In our strategy of hydrogen development, we mentioned that we are going to start communicating with the mainland authorities on all these. Mr. Tony J, we have to achieve carbon neutrality and reduce carbon emission. We have to make use of renewable energy in order to do that. I believe green hydrogen is going to play a critical role. I have high expectation on the strategy of hydrogen development. We might see wider adoption of hydrogen in heavy vehicles in the preliminary stage. Do we have any goals in terms of how much carbon emission that we are going to reduce through the use of hydrogen? How is the use of hydrogen going to help us achieve carbon neutrality before 2050? I was mentioned about R&D projects and how we can leverage our advantages. In terms of R&D, there is often subsidy from the government for large-scale enterprises. They may make use of hydrogen, and they may make investments in hydrogen energy. There might be R&D projects that suit the needs of Hong Kong. But there may be conflicts of interest. For some enterprises, as they develop their businesses, they may make use of hydrogen as part of their products. When you offer subsidies to these enterprises, how are you going to ease the public concern in terms of conflicts of interest? Thank you. Secretary. On reducing carbon emission, the government has a clear goal. By 2050, we need to achieve carbon neutrality. That means zero carbon emission. And by 2035, we're going to reduce carbon emissions by half. We have to work hard on these goals. in order to reduce carbon emissions by half before 2035, we will change the mix of our energy. We will reduce the use of energy that's going to emit carbon dioxide, and we're going to apply new energy in vehicles. There are certainties in relation to the pace of development of hydrogen energy. So hydrogen is not going to be the major tool for us to reduce carbon emissions before 2035. We make it clear in our strategy of hydrogen development that if technologies in relation to hydrogen becomes mature, then we will definitely grasp the opportunities. We're not going to set hard targets or indicators. That's why we don't call it a roadmap. We call it a strategy of hydrogen development. If we set targets on how many cars or vehicles are going to make use of hydrogen, it's going to incur high costs. It's not going to be cost effective. That's why we don't set hard targets. We're going to build infrastructure, and we're going to promote the use of hydrogen to see how big a market it's going to be in the future. We make use of funds to support relevant R&D projects. Would that give rise to speculations that there are conflicts of interest? Well, we have the Green Tech Fund. We also have the new Energy Transport Fund. We have been subsidizing different trial projects because we say clearly that we are subsidizing hydrogen trial projects. I don't think it's going to give rise to any doubts or speculations. Thank you. Mr. Frankie Yik, I think this is a comprehensive strategy. But as Mr. Tony Che said, some people may be skeptical about this strategy. In paragraph 17 of your paper, you mentioned that there are uncertainties surrounding the future development of hydrogen energy, and that the government will continue to promote demonstration of hydrogen technology innovation. Well, people who don't take part in these projects may be skeptical about the use of hydrogen. Some may wonder why you focus on the use of hydrogen in transport. But you mentioned in paragraph 16 of the paper, gray hydrogen is more expensive than traditional fossil fuels. And if you use green hydrogen, it's 2 to 3 times more expensive. So I believe, Secretary, you'll have to explain this to the public. People may not buy in your strategy because it's not a development blueprint. However, I do think that you are making a comprehensive effort here. We hope that the government can demonstrate the use of hydrogen, and one way to do that is through cross-boundary vehicles. However, there is the issue of price difference. In the mainland, it costs $60 per kilogram for hydrogen, and in Hong Kong, it's $80 per kilogram. How do we convince the public that it is a reasonable price? Do you have information that you can share with us about the price levels of hydrogen in Hong Kong? Secretary. I thank Mr. Yik for the questions. You're right that at the current stage, there's a price difference in hydrogen between the mainland and Hong Kong. That's because in the mainland, the government is subsidizing users on hydrogen. In Hong Kong, we have yet to manufacture hydrogen, or we lack the equipment to produce hydrogen in a large-scale manner. So that's why we're subsidizing individual projects. In the mainland, there's production and manufacturing of hydrogen, and it helps with the development of the industry. If we do that in Hong Kong, we're actually helping industry or businesses from other places. For Outao, we're still in talks with the relevant parties. We might have the information or statistics ready later. Members of the trade told me that they might want to build their own fleet, and if they use the hydrogen refilling station, would they get subsidies? Well, will there be hydrogen refilling at charging facilities? Well, if we're able to identify sites, or if the relevant parties can identify sites, and if there are projects suitable, we will consider them. We might offer subsidies. Mr. Stephen Ho. I think the strategy of hydrogen development looks good to me. It's quite comprehensive. Well, there are uncertainties surrounding the development of green energy. If we're too rigid now, it might restrict ourselves. You mentioned about legislative amendments just now. You might have to consult the public and the Legislative Council when you prepare to enact new laws. We are going to see gray, blue, and green hydrogen. Are you going to go through consultation with all the sectors? If you are going to enact laws, you might have to look at the time cost. Secretary mentioned just now that there's uncertainties. However, there are still criticisms about why it takes so long for the government to roll out this strategy of hydrogen development. I think it's reasonable that you take a pragmatic approach as you promote green energy, because we have to take into consideration the cost. Say for EVs, the price for charging facilities might differ at different stations. And so we have to take into consideration the problem of integration. Now, on green energy, the government will have to work with the relevant sectors. To promote green energy, well, the government will benefit because it's going to use the green energy itself. And for the public, they may benefit by using EVs. In terms of collaboration between the government and different sectors, it has to do with how much subsidy the government is offering to the trades. For SMEs, they don't have so many resources. The use of green energy may affect their costs. And if there is change in policy, then businesses will have to bear the costs of switching to other types of energy. So the government has to take into consideration costs. Also, with our economic condition now, will the government be prudent in terms of putting in resources to develop green energy or hydrogen energy? I believe that making use of hydrogen will bring economic benefits to us. If the government sees the same, then it should think about offering financial support so that hydrogen will in turn benefit our economy.
Secretary, please be brief. Thank you. We have a Green Tech Fund and we have a NET Fund to support different pilot schemes and projects. The member is worried if we will be abandoning development of hydrogen in the future. Well, that's not very likely because we already have a pipelines for delivery of hydrogen in our existing system of fossil fuel. We have to make sure that hydrogen is competitive, and we have to make a decision after accumulating enough experience. That is why we have to conduct pilot schemes to see where we have potential to apply hydrogen. And after that, we will see how we can promote the development of hydrogen with our policies. Thank you. Next, Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad that the government has formulated this strategy. Last year, I moved this motion on hydrogen development, and I'm glad to see that the government has taken an important step forward, and I commend the content of the strategy. I have the following comments. We don't have much conditions for development of new energy. We rely on the importation of energy. Hydrogen is the energy that we have to use for us to achieve carbon neutrality. With our high price of renewable energy, it seems that it's appropriate for us to develop hydrogen. And I think that the administration should make use of our advantage to promote the development of hydrogen so that we can become a mature demonstration zone for new energy. In terms of measures for developing hydrogen, in terms of infrastructure, regulation, and legal framework, the government is working on them. But it seems that we don't have much demand for hydrogen. I agree with what Mr. Robert Lee said. The secretary said that we have to, development of hydrogen development should be demand-driven for us to develop the industry. So at this initial stage of hydrogen development, will the government consider subsidizing the industry? For example, making use of carbon trading indicators and tax incentives to promote the demand of hydrogen. After that, the demand of hydrogen may grow, and with the improvement to the industry chain, the cost of hydrogen development may go down, and that the trade can become sustainable or self-sustainable. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lee or Dr. Lee, for the question. You are right. For us to develop the industry, we need demand. Without a demand, it's difficult for the industry to grow. As I mentioned, we cannot manufacture and produce hydrogen or hydrogen fuel cell products or vehicles. So our practice is different from other places. We do not focus our support on the manufacturing of hydrogen products or vehicles. We test out hydrogen application on a pilot basis, and we subsidize individual projects. We will compare the context of application of hydrogen to that of other new energy to see where we can apply hydrogen. And when we have identified such context of application, the government will focus on them to promote the use of hydrogen. And this is in line with our unique environment. Thank you. Mr. Lee Chang-kan. Thank you. The strategy of hydrogen development is a small step forward for the development of green economy in Hong Kong. It shows the world and our country what our role is. So I'm glad to see that we have a macro strategy of hydrogen development. The secretary and the members said that we have to focus on education of the public, and as hydrogen products develop and evolve, will we be making use of HFC to drive vehicles? That may not necessarily be the case, because we can make use of methanol to generate hydrogen to fuel vehicles. With technological advancement and new innovations, hydrogen as a form of energy may become popularized. I have two questions. First, Hong Kong has the support our country, and we are global facing. We may not be able to turn ourselves into a one-stop factory, but we can become a demonstration zone. Shouldn't we establish some museums to showcase our hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, railways, or street washing machines? Shouldn't we establish a demonstration zone in Hong Kong that make use of hydrogen to showcase our technology to the world? We want to nurture new energy talents. We should let our students know that development of new energy is not limited to laboratories, but actually new energy can be applied to real life scenarios. We only have some 7 million people, but actually hydrogen is supplied in a lot of different contexts in other places, in particular goods vehicles that are long haul. So I wonder if there is any long-term commercial strategy on hydrogen development, and what is the government's plan on capacity building? Secretary, thank you. We have some concrete plans on capacity building. Last week, I participated in a ceremony that was organized by the VTC and the China Examination Center that train local talents on new energy. We want to help mainland enterprises go global. Shouldn't we the member asked if we should establish a museum to showcase our technology. Whilst we are still identifying suitable projects, we want to focus on contests for application and individual projects. But then, of course, if there are enough enterprises that want to apply hydrogen in Hong Kong or want to test their technology out here, we will consider setting up museums, as the members suggested. It's my turn. I'm glad to see the strategy of hydrogen development promulgated by the EB, the government focuses on gray hydrogen and accord lower priority to green and blue hydrogen because they are not as mature in terms of development and they're more expensive. I know that the government is working hard on promoting their 4 strategies. Hopefully, the government will promulgate the hydrogen standard certification next year so that we can clarify our position. I have 2 questions. I know that the government is working on the 4 strategies and the private sector has been advising the government. There will be a number of new waste-to-energy facilities to be rolled out by the government, including the iPark 2, to be discussed in the next item, including and O-Park. Shouldn't we incorporate hydrogen manufacturing facilities into the waste-to-energy facilities in Hong Kong? I think that we have to have a center for hydrogen R&D and manufacturing in Shanghai Technopole, for example. Apart from medical and AI centers, I think that new energy is one of the INT categories and areas that we should develop in the Shanghai Technopole. I think that we should set aside certain sites in the northern metropolis for R&D of hydrogen. Secretary, thank you for your question. In new development areas, including northern metropolis, in the central artificial islands, we adopt measures to achieve carbon neutrality. So when we develop these new areas, we set aside sites for supply, R&D, and development of new energy. But as for the details planning and the layout, we will have to look at the demand for the new energy in their respective places. What about the ways to energy facilities? Can we incorporate hydrogen in those facilities? Thank you. We have been approached by some enterprises, including those that generate hydrogen from waste. When we talk about iPark, you will know more about that because we have a site constraint, so it's very difficult for us to adopt the technology that I mentioned in iPark. It will be best if we have demonstration facilities that use hydrogen. That is why the airport authority is working on whether we can conduct a pilot project that turns waste into hydrogen. We hope that we can have similar demonstration projects in Hong Kong. Thank you. I think that members support the strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. I hope that we can formulate legal framework and standards for hydrogen and new energy development in Hong Kong. Thank you. Next item on the agenda: operation and management of Northeast New Territories landfill and development of modern waste-to-energy incinerators. I'll ask the relevant government officials to enter the room first. With us today are Ms. Diane Wong, Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology, Dr. Samuel Choi, Director of Environmental Environmental Protection, Mr. Raymond Wu, Deputy Director of Environmental Protection, Mr. Michael Lewis, Assistant Director of EPD, Mr. Tony Chen, Assistant Director of EPD, Ms. Teresa Wu, Principal Environmental Protection Officer of EPD, and Ms. Heidi Lam, Principal Environmental Protection Officer of EPD. Under Secretary. As the government officials are taking their seat, I will read out the names of the members who have pressed the button. Ms. Chen Yutming, Mr. Kenneth Lau, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Mr. Michael Tian, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Holden Chow, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Robert Lee, Ms. Elizabeth Quat, and myself. We have to hand the room over to the next panel at 4:30. Under Secretary.
主席，各位
Chair, members, we report to this panel today on the latest progress of the modern waste-to-energy incinerators. And upon members' request, we're also telling members the management of Northeast New Territories landfills. In the Waste Blueprint for Hong Kong 2035, the government sets out the vision to move away from the reliance on landfills for direct disposal of MSW by 2035. We're heading to two major directions. That is, we're going to reduce waste at source and encourage recycling. We're also going to build waste-to-energy facilities to handle MSW. The EPD is pressing ahead with the development of modern WTE facilities through IPARC 1 that is under construction and IPARC 2 which is being prepared. We are going to enhance the incineration capacity to 9,000 tons per day. As we continue to reduce waste at source by 2035, we're going to achieve the vision of zero landfill. We'll no longer need to rely on landfill sites to process MSW. But before that, we need to extend the NENT landfill. And we need the other landfill sites to cope with the short-term and medium-term needs. The EPD will step up management of landfill sites, especially the NENT landfill that is close to the Hong Kong and Shenzhen border. We will try to minimize the impacts of the landfill site on neighboring residents. My colleague is going to tell you about the latest progress of the Northeast New Territories landfill site, and my other colleague will tell you about the development of the modern waste-to-energy incinerators. In the Waste Development Blueprint 2035, the government sets out the vision to move away from the reliance on landfills for direct disposal of MSW by around 2035. We will continue to work hard to promote waste reduction and waste separation to reduce the overall waste disposal amount. At the same time, we are speeding up the development of modern WTE facilities so that by 2035, we will no longer need to rely on landfills for direct disposal of MSW. Nowadays, we dispose of 11,000 tons of MSW to landfill sites per day. Within the three landfill sites, only the NENT landfill and the NE West landfill sites can receive MSW. We are now extending the Southeast NT landfill and the West NT landfill to cope with the short and medium-term needs. The EPD will step up the management of landfill sites, especially that near the Hong Kong and Shenzhen border, to minimize the impacts on neighboring residents. Starting from 2021, the EPD has put in more resources to roll out different enhancement measures to improve the management and operation of landfill sites. In 2024, we will roll out further enhancement measures. First, to reduce odor of treating waste at landfill sites, while OPARC 2 in March this year, after its commissioning, the EPD is making use of anaerobic digestion technology to treat pig waste. As at the end of May this year, OPark has processed 1,200 tons of pig waste. Every day it processes 25 tons per day, which account for 60% of total pig waste. We believe that by the end of this year, we can have the new technology, that is the anaerobic digestion technology, to replace the old technology. We're also going to spray biological agent, and we'll make use of the microorganism in the biological agents to deal with the odor. We'll also have a metal cover to cap the pig waste pit and livestock waste pit, and it is only when necessary that we open the cover. At the same time, we draw reference from mainland practices and practices in other places. We've introduced new technologies. By the end of May this year, we have started in certain landfill sites test out the use of impermeable plastic liners to improve the odor problem. At the same time, we will expedite the connection of gas extraction facilities to the existing landfill gas collection system and continue to enhance the overall extraction volume of landfill gas at the NENT landfill to strengthen odor control at the landfill. Following the implementation of different improvement measures, the Hong Kong and Shenzhen government has, starting from March last year, launched a air quality monitoring exercise. The levels of hydrogen sulfide as well as ammonia meet the national standard. The EPD has also commissioned professional bodies to carry out at the Liantang and Henyun Wai areas and the nearby local villages to hold independent monitoring exercises. From 2023 to mid-May 2024, the levels of hydrogen sulfide has been at a low level, which meets the national standard. EPD as well as the relevant Shenzhen authorities have been in close liaison to explore how we can improve the management of NENT landfill to address people's concerns. In 2023, the number of complaints received by EPD concerning the NENT landfill decreased significantly by 80% compared to that in 2022. To reduce the visual and odor impact of landfill on neighboring residents, the EPD advanced the restoring and greening works to improve the appearances of landfill sites and to improve the not in my backyard effect. We expect that 80% of the landfill sites will have its restoring and greening works completed. Apart from the restoring and greening works, which concern about 20 hectares of the landfill site, in 2024, we will, for the remaining 20% of the area, launch the remaining restoring and greening works. As at May 2024, we have completed 5 hectares. We have completed the restoring and greening works for an addition of 5 hectares of the landfill site. Mr. Michael Low is going to tell you more about the other project. The government has been making use of WTE facilities. With the commissioning of IPOC 1 and IPOC 2, we're going to process 9,000 tons of waste. After the commissioning of IPOC 2, one of the landfill sites is no longer going to receive MSW. It will only receive construction waste, which is not going to produce any odor. It is expected that by 2030, we will achieve the vision of zero landfill. Waste-to-energy incineration is a global trend. It has largely reduced emissions. A lot of these incinerators have become a landmark in other places, and public facilities have been incorporated in different places in these incineration facilities, such as coffee shop and education center. IPARC 1 is built around Shakuchao. Every day it can process 3,000 tons of MSW. It can reduce the bulk of waste by 90%. Every year it can export 480 million kilowatt electricity to the power grid. Well, we have 12 members who are waiting to ask questions. Perhaps the government can stop here because all the contents are included in your papers. I'll give each member 3 minutes. Ms. Chen Yutming. Thank you, Chair. The NENT landfill is in new territories. I'm a district councillor in the relevant area. I am a resident of Taku Lane, so I can feel the pain of the local residents. I thank the administration for being at the panel for the second time to tell us about the latest progress of the relevant facilities. I've been talking about problems surrounding the NENT landfill. I thank the administration for listening to the views of local residents, and starting from 2022, it has rolled out different measures. These are all covered in the paper. I also thank Dr. Samuel Choi for allowing us to visit the NENT landfill to learn about the new technologies being adopted. We see that new technologies have been adopted to tackle the older problems. Understand that some of the waste will no longer be sent to the incinerator or to the landfill. I appreciate that the government is working with the mainland authorities to step up the use of technology to tackle the older problem. Landfill as well as MSW are going to produce odor. Well, the administration mentioned how the levels of odor meets national standard. However, there is still foul stench. We are willing to offer free accommodation in order for you to stay in the area to experience how serious the odor problem is. I think the government can learn from overseas practices in terms of how to manage the landfill sites. I'm glad that IPARC 2 can process another 2,000 tons of waste and that it will be commissioned 2 years earlier than expected. Well, the IPARC is going to affect the development of the ecological corridor. So I hope the government can continue to monitor the progress of IPARC 2. And this will help us see an earlier closing date of the landfill. Lastly, I want to bring up 2 issues. The paper mentions about IPARC 2 in Chuncho and how it's going to make use of technology to process another 2,000 tons of waste. I want to know if such technology can be introduced in IPARC 1 to enhance its processing capacity. For IPARC 1, waste is transported to the facility by sea. I hope the government can think about whether it is possible to reclaim further land to expand the size of IPARK 1 so that we can achieve zero landfill earlier?
有機會再會。
Apologies. Perhaps the government officials will need to reply in writing. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Thank you. The free landfills will be exhausted by 2026. The last term of the government allocated some $40 billion to extend the landfill. We have scarce land resources in our city. We cannot continue to rely on landfill. Other countries have been making use of incinerators to deal with the waste problems. We have 9 incinerators in the Greater Bay Area. In Singapore, there are 4. In Japan, they have thousands of incinerators. So I think that building incinerators is just to meet the global trend. But incinerators don't solve all the problems. Some 90% of the waste can be combusted, but there will be 10% of the waste that will become bottom ash, and that will be recycled. It is said that the government will invite for recycling proposals from potential contractors. Will the government consider this idea of no waste Greater Bay Area? For IPARK 1, it is mentioned that it will be in operation in full very soon, and the energy generated will be for the use of IPARK. And 480 million kilowatts of energy and electricity can be supplied to power grid. What is the strategy of this, and how much energy can be saved by the incinerators by making use of this waste to energy approach? Undersecretary, thank you for your support for our incinerators. As mentioned, we have worked with the Greater Bay Area on this. We want to build a no-waste Greater Bay Area. We want to recycle waste and develop green industry. We want to convert waste into energy and resources. Regarding the technical questions, I'll ask the director to answer those. Director, please. For the entire IPARK 2, it is an incinerator, IPARK 1. The heat generated will be converted into electricity. We sell these surplus electricity to the power companies. For the money that can be generated, that will be sent to the treasury. As for the details, we're still working on them. We only have concrete data when we operate the incinerator. Please supplement in writing. Sorry, Chairman, I have to declare interest. My family and myself have lands in new territories. Next, Mr. Chen Xiuhong. I have to declare interest. I am a senior advisor of the CLP. When the NENT and WENT are being exhausted, the government is working on incinerators to solve the problems, and they're working on reducing the construction time of IPARK 2 to 54 months, and they're raising the capacity by 2,000 tons. A few questions. Currently, an average of 11,000 tons of MSW are disposed of at landfills in Hong Kong, and IPARK 1 and IPARK 2 can process 3,000 and plus 6,000 tons of waste. With over 10,000 tons of MSW generated per day, the IPARK 1 and IPARK 2 will not be able to accommodate the waste that will be generated per day. When will the government start planning for IPARK 3? Because it takes a long time for such parks to be planned? And when the iPark 3 has not been built, how will the government take care of the surplus MSW that cannot be processed? My third question, when we have WTE facilities, we don't have to rely on landfill to solve the MSW issues. Now, the MSW charging scheme has been suspended. Will the government review the waste blueprint for Hong Kong 2035 as the scheme has been delayed indefinitely? And the government said that we will process a waste and convert them into energy in the Greater Bay Area in a holistic manner. How will they achieve this goal? Undersecretary, it is said that around 11,000 tons of MSW are being disposed at landfills. For iPark 1 and iPark 2, they can process 9,000 tons of MSW, but as for the food waste, we can process and treat about 600 tons. We have a number of recycling measures and facilities, and also we will step up public education. If we can achieve waste reduction and waste separation for recycling, we will be able to meet the demand. As for iPark 3, we have to think long term. iParks can operate for 15 years or even 30 years. Our population and our economy grow. Therefore, over the long run, we have to see what the long-term demand for iParks is, and along with relevant factors. Currently, we're just identifying site for iParks. As for whether we're actually building it or when we're building it, we have to look. We have to see. Thank you. They have to answer my question on the Greater Bay Area. I have already answered my questions. Mr. Michael Tian. I have a few questions on site selection. A lot of Tuen Mun residents told me that they're unhappy about the site selection because there is landfill at Tuen Mun, and now we have the WTE incinerators at Tuen Mun. It seems that all these obnoxious facilities are built there. At Lung Kwu Town, there have been reclamation to build residential developments and welfare and social facilities. There is electricity generators, extension of landfills, T Park, Y Park, Zhengshui, Columbarium. Now this incinerators is at the center to these areas. I have to report to the residents of Tuen Mun. Now it's in the middle of T Park and the Columbarium. Thank you. About 11,000 tons of MSW is generated per day, and 3,000 of them is waste, food waste. Now you have abandoned the MSW charging scheme, and I think that you cannot achieve this waste reduction and waste separation. And you say that by 2030 the problem can be solved. The two incinerators can treat about 9,000 tons, so there is excess of 2,000 tons that cannot be processed. So how can you reduce waste by 2,000 tons? You can only do that by reducing food waste. With O-Park can only treat 600 tons of food waste. What about the remaining 1,500 tons of food waste? You have to build 2 extra O-Park. So that we just have to reduce food waste by 500 tons. So when can we reduce 500 tons of food waste? That will rely on the food transmitter, for example. I asked this chief executive last time, but he didn't answer my questions. We have 200 public housing developments. If we can install transmitter and all these developments, we can solve the food waste problem. I think that we have to finish installing the transmitter as soon as possible so that we can expedite the reduction of food waste at source. Otherwise, I don't think that the MSW can be reduced to 9,000 tons per day. Undersecretary, as mentioned, we will strengthen our recycling facilities and step up public education. I just want to ask if you will install transmitter at the 213 public housing developments. We'll also install smart recycling bins at private residential developments as well. Apart from public housing developments and private developments, we have 100 food waste recycling spots at refuse collection points managed by FEHD. We place food waste recycling bins there, and we have some pilot bins at the wet markets. Thank you. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I just want to express my stance. We are faced with a series of uncertainties. We want to recycle and reduce waste, but there's resistance and challenges. Now we're talking about second I-Park. We're trying to catch up by building it. I don't see any room for further adjustment. So I'm glad to see that the government is trying to compress the timetable from 72 months to some 54 months so that the I-Park can be completed as soon as possible. Regarding the proposal of the third I-Park, I hope that the government will continue to work on the feasibility and site selection for the third I-Park. I'm not asking them to confirm the plan, but I hope that they can start working on it. Undersecretary, you have some time to reply Mr. Lam's question, and perhaps you can address the questions put by other members as well. Thank you. I-Park 3 is to provide for waste treatment facilities for the population in Northern Metropolis. We're still identifying a site to construct I-Park 3. When we have certain progress, we will report to the LegCo members. Thank you. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. Waste to energy is a recent trend, and the technology has advanced very rapidly. I've taken a look at the relevant WTE facilities in the mainland, and they are sometimes tourist spots. This is a WTE facility at Denmark. As you can see that there are visitors and tourists that engage in grass sliding there. In Chimwon, in Northern Metropolis, we're building these WTE facilities. I wonder if the facilities there can be what the picture is showing. How do we give back to the residents of the area? Can we refund for electricity fares or build social and welfare facilities as a return to the residents? At Tumun, what is the indoor floor area? Can we build recreational facilities for the residents of the district? Because this will generate economic benefits, and this will allow us to pay back to the residents of the area. For Shaku Chao, there was a discussion of building a swimming pool at the iPark there. Can we still build a swimming pool there now? My question is, how do we give back to the residents so that the residents can enjoy these WTE facilities? You have selected Tuen Mun and Northern Metropolis to build these incinerators. So will you solve my problems?
I'll invite Deputy Director to tell you about it. I thank member for the questions. We are building the iPark 2. Well, something that is an obnoxious facility. It's not true. We want to build iPark 2 into a world-class waste-to-energy incinerator. We're not just aiming to achieve zero landfill, we also want to achieve carbon neutrality through iPark 2. Without iPark 2, it will be hard for us to achieve carbon neutrality. We want to set aside more space in iPark 2 to incorporate recreational and leisure facilities. We want to have restaurants and spa facilities in iPark 2. We do want to build iPark 2 into a tourist attraction so that it can bring about economic growth. Dr. Low, why Kwok? Years ago, I started taking part in working groups that explore how we can process MSW. I was sitting in the Advisory Council on the Environment when the government was conducting EIA for iPark 1. And iPark 1 was the first WTE facility we had. Back in 20 years ago, we were already exploring the building of a WTE facility. In Europe, back in 1980s, they started making use of WTE facility to do away with landfill sites, to process waste. We are lagging far behind. It is only starting from next year that we will see some of our waste being treated in the iPark. I see that a lot of new technologies will be adopted. Waste will be transported to the facility by sea for processing. All these technologies are ready. It's just that we are progressing too slowly. My question is, when are you going to ask for funding approval at the Legislative Council for the proposed iPark 2? You mentioned about your goals. I just feel that you're moving too slowly. In the meantime, you'll still have to rely on landfill sites, which draw a lot of criticisms from our citizens. So when are you going to seek funding approval? Undersecretary, we are seeking funding in accordance with the established procedure. We will come to the LegCo as soon as possible for funding approval. Well, there's not much time left for the current term government. All the existing members would like the government to seek approval soon for the project. Would it be done within the current term government? Well, perhaps towards the end of the current term government or the early part of the future government. Mr. Robert Lee, I have two questions, Chairman. First, has the government considered introducing a private partnership model to introduce operators with experiences to manage iPark 1 and iPark 2? The operator may, through charging fees sustain its operation. And this will also cover the operation cost of iPark 1 and iPark 2. In the paper, it is mentioned that currently the NENT landfill as well as the Northeast New Territories landfill will reach saturation in 2026, and therefore it's necessary to extend the two of the landfills. I want to learn about the latest progress of the extension works. When do you expect the extension works will be completed? And how many years do you think the landfill sites could be used for? Thank you, Chairman. We hope to bring in more investors into the projects. Last March, we conducted the market sounding exercise. We have 15 overseas and mainland enterprises that came to meet with us. Some of them opt for the BOT model, and some opt for the BBO model. We've talked to the Shenzhen authorities to learn about the practice. We have to take into consideration the time required. We have to opt for a model that allows us to commence construction of the parks as soon as possible. For BOT, the financial arrangement may be more complex, so it will take a longer time. We also take into consideration the cost. For BOT, the money is paid by installment, and for other models, the government may have to pay everything upfront. So we'll consider all these models based on the actual circumstances. For iPark 1, it's currently being constructed. Our goal is that the two landfills where extension works are being carried out will be completed by 2026. We hope that the landfill sites will be extended by 2026. Ms. Elizabeth Kwon. I think it takes too long. We've been waiting for a long time. We visited Northern Europe, South Korea, and Japan to learn about their practices. We want to see the commissioning of waste-to-energy facilities in Hong Kong, and the first such facility is still being built. Now the government is briefing us on the preparatory work of the proposed iPark 2. Well, I welcome this project. I hope that the government can take on board our suggestions and make good use of the land. It's great that the works program can be compressed by 2 years, and I'm all for that. But can we speed up the construction progress? Can we adopt more advanced technologies? Can we further lower the cost so that it is more acceptable to the public? I always tell the government not to wait until they get the funding approval to educate the public about the project. You have to tell the public that waste-to-energy facilities won't cause pollution to the surrounding environment, and that part of the facilities can be used by the public. It can even be turned into an attraction site. Like in Shenzhen, the relevant facilities is now a tourist attraction. There is even coffee shop in the facility. I've yet to see any publicity campaign launched by the government to educate the public about the facility. You might be met with complaints and objections when the facility is being built. You have to tell the local residents about the good things of these facilities. Well, I believe members of the LegCo are going to support this project. We do hope the public will give their support as well, so I hope you can do more on publicity. Ms. Wong? At MTR stations, we play short videos to educate the public about the project. So we've been making a persistent effort in promoting iPark 1 and iPark 2. We will talk to Rural Committee, the District Council, as well as relevant stakeholders and consult them on their views of the public facilities. We have to go through EIA as well as the construction of piers, so we have to go through statutory procedures. We also have to draft the tendering documents. And the number of tender documents that we receive will also affect our progress. We hope that by 2025 we'll be able to report the latest progress to members, and then we can perhaps go through the Public Works Subcommittee and the Finance Committee. So we will try our best to seek funding approval as soon as possible. Mr. Michael Luke. I give my support to the WTE incinerator project. However, I'm skeptical about the site selection and the site for processing MSW. The WTE incinerator is located in Zhengzhou, Tuen Mun. Well, Tuen Mun residents understand that there is limited pollution caused by the incinerator. However, you aren't closing the landfill site in Tuen Mun. You are closing the one at Northeast New Territories. I think you have to be fair to the residents. With the incinerator in Tuen Mun, will the landfill site in West New Territories become the only landfill that receives MSW? And you have to make sure that we won't see more MSW in the coming years. Well, you're saying that you're trying to promote waste reduction at source, but I'm not too optimistic about our progress. Well, we have to look at it in a pragmatic manner. If there is no significant reduction in our MSW, how are you going to process the extra 1,000 to 2,000 tons of MSW? You don't even have a timetable for iPark 3. You haven't even identified a suitable site for it. So, is the landfill site in Tuen Mun going to process all this extra waste? When will the landfill site in Tuen Mun be closed? When will it stop receiving MSW? I'm not too optimistic that you're going to achieve your goal by 2030. How are you going to process the MSW? When iPark was commissioned, be it West New Territories landfill or Northeast New Territories landfill, the amount of waste were significantly reduced. For IWMF2, we mainly transported the waste by sea to reduce the relevant impacts. Members mentioned and asked about when the landfill site in Tuen Mun would be closed. By 2035, we are going to achieve zero landfill. When IWMF2 is commissioned, we'll look at the progress and we'll see if there's a chance for us to close the landfill site in Tuen Mun early. However, we do have to look at the progress then. How about the site for IPARC 3? Well, there's a need for us to build IPARC 3 in the long run. We'll see a growth in population in the northern metropolis, so we will have to plan facilities to meet people's needs. So we're now identifying a suitable site for IPARC 3. We will announce the details in due course.
Mr. Kwok-Wai-Kan, thank you. 2 questions. IPARC 1, we can only start using it next year. IPARC 2, we don't even have funding for it. It can be commissioned by 2030, the earliest. The government said that they have talked to relevant contractors and the construction timetable can be compressed to 54 months. And it is said in the paper that the government will offer financial incentives to expedite the construction period. Well, is this construction period of 54 months the timetable after offering the financial incentives to contractors, and what kind of financial incentives are we talking about here? What amount of incentives are we providing to these contractors? My second question. The Secretary stresses time and again that the government will work with neighboring cities on synergy in terms of waste to energy. So what is the progress? Have we reached any agreements with our neighboring cities? Perhaps I will ask the Deputy Director to elaborate. Thank you. 54 months. This is the construction period that we think is feasible. Letting out the rainy season, we think that we can complete IPARC 2 within 54 months. Some contractors may be able to complete the project even faster than 54 months. We are still seeing if we can offer further financial incentives to contractors, but we have to talk to the relevant bureaus. If there are contractors that can expedite the progress even further, then perhaps we can incentivize them to do so by offering them some incentives. Thank you. It's my turn. My question is similar to that put by Mr. Robert Lee. I know that IPARC 1 is designed, built, and operated by a single contractor. Mainland has relevant experience by inviting the private enterprises to operate the incinerators. Should we make use of this DPFO instead of DBO to ask the contractors to finance the project? We haven't really adopted DPO in projects other than the Western Harbor Crossing. So perhaps you should engage consultant to handle this for you. Should we make use of this DPFO approach, that is design, build, finance, operate model to build IPARC? Thank you. We keep an open mind to it. There are 2 major factors to consider: time and total cost. We have engaged some accounting firms to look at it for us. Should the government be financing a raising fund for the project? What is the cost and what is the timetable? I think that we should look into it. We, as the government, has a lower cost of financing. For IPARC 1 is incorporated under the Green Bond Program. The same goes for IPARC 2. I think that our capacity of financing is stronger than the private sector. We have to consider a series of factors. We keep an open mind, but we have to identify the most cost-effective approach for us to fund the project. You mentioned that you will visit Shenzhen and other cities to learn from their experience in terms of technology. I think that you should also learn from their tendering experience and financing models, because their approaches are more mature than ours. So I think that you can learn from them when you visit the mainland. Hopefully, by early 2025 or late 2024, we can complete our work in this area. So much for me. Any other business? Any other business? Dr. Lo Wai-kwok. Chairman, I just want to make a brief report. On the 25th of March, members actually supported me putting or turning an environmental organization into a statutory body. I want to submit a private bill. The work has been smooth. The chief executive agreed in writing that I can submit the private bill to the council. And on the 14th of June and 21st of June, we gazetted the bill and we placed a notice on the newspapers, and I reported to the secretariat. And I hope that the bill can be discussed on the 3rd of July and we can have the first reading there. The House Committee will decide on whether we will establish a Bills Committee on that. Thank you, Dr. Low. The Secretary will note the relevant matters. There being no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.